OG Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Chapter 3, Section 3A of Belonging Again II.1, and we're going to be resume reading. We've talked about the distinction between preparing and planning based on Ivan Illich. There's also a parallax conversation that goes into detail about that, and how we have a society that has a lot of planning, but the more you're dealing with a complex society, the more you're dealing with things that can't be predicted, the more important it becomes actually to be able to think in terms of preparation, not just in terms of planning, because planning requires you to be able to know what's going to happen. Planning is almost about avoiding surprise. And in fact, we live in a society that kind of moralizes not being surprised. But you see, the more complex the world becomes, the more we can't really predict the future, the more it's going to be critical to be prepared, not simply to plan, because by definition, you just can't plan everything that's coming, especially with the technological singularity, which will be a main idea that we're going to focus on here. This section is going to be exploring thoughts on cosmic evolutionary philosophy and a dialectical approach to technological singularity by Cadell Last. It's a paper he wrote in 2018, and we're going to be bringing that to the discussion on avoiding rational impasses, menti-divergence, the ability to think outside of game theory problems that lead to a lot of unintentional consequences and the like. And if we can't make those adjustments, the future is going to prove something that self-effaces us, versus something that could lead to our extension, which of course alludes to Nick Land dilemmas that we have discussed throughout this work. So we're going to begin reading. And again, this is Chapter 3, Section 3A, Thoughts on Cosmic Evolutionary Philosophy and a Dialectical Approach to Technological Singularity by Cadell Last. In 2018, Cadell Last published a paper in Information on the Coming Technological Singularity and the need to consider how we define and seek that singularity, in light of the fact that human subjectivity is structured triadically by the real, symbolic, and imaginary, alluding to Lacan. In this section, I will attempt to sketch some of the ideas with which Cadell's paper gifted me, and if there is anything of value here, it is thanks to him. Please do not assume that I accurately represent Cadell's views, for I might be entirely wrong in my understanding, so please read the original paper for yourself. Also, I cannot promise what you are reading now will make much sense if you don't read the original source material. So again, please consult the original. Also, Cadell makes distinctions between the singularity, the technological singularity, and global brain singularity. While here we will mostly just be discussing the technological singularity and use singularity, the word, less strictly. For elaborations on those distinctions, please see OG Rose conversation number 60. Additionally, what I say about observers actively contributing to the formation of the universe can be associated with the ontological design discussed by Daniel Fraga, whose work is also enthralling and important. Currently, our talk of the singularity, the technological singularity, is often reminiscent of a cheap Freudian desire to return to the womb or return to Eden, both of which are basically a wish fulfillment to escape feelings of incompleteness, lack, and frustrated desire. The topic of lack is expanded on in the Philosophy of Lack series, which is on Cadell's page. But here it is enough to emphasize that lack is that feeling that something is missing, which also alludes to The Weight of Glory by C.S. Lewis. It is a result of the split in the subject between what is wanted and what is, the imagined and the real, and we live and manage that split through our symbolic order, sociology, we could say, as manifest in our daily lives, in our societies. Now, these categories overlap, for we tend to define the real according to what we imagine, and we like to believe the symbolic likewise reflects and participates in the real, all while we try to avoid experiencing the real in a manner that forces us to accept that the imagined and symbolic diverge from the real, perhaps radically so. We are strange and paradoxical creatures, and yet a reason we are afflicted is precisely because we do not acknowledge this reality. Part of our paradox is that we experience it as non-contradictory. O.G. Rose elsewhere explores the dynamics of lack and interplay of the real, imagined, and symbolic in more specific detail, while here we will aim for a broader overview of individual and cosmic development. We will discuss RSIs, which is enough for our purposes, and to cut to the chase, the argument is that we need to seek a technological harmony, which doesn't efface RSIs, but instead helps RSIs harmonize by accepting the necessity of lack, thus leaving singularization behind. Technological singularity would erase lack, thus unintentionally effacing RSI, subjects and us, the structure of RSI. It is very possible that harmony without technology is impossible, so we are not arguing against or demonizing technology. Rather, we need to use technology according to different metrics than metrics which define success as removing lack, which leads us unintentionally to AA and affliction, alluding to Simone Weil. There is good reason to think RSIs are essential to human subjectivity, and that subjectivity is essential for the universe reaching highest being, quote unquote. If RSIs are somehow necessary for there to be observers, and if observers or minds actively contribute to the formation and realization of the universe, then removing RSIs will bring about the loss of the observers the universe needs to realize its highest becoming, a point which also aligns with the work of the Lacan Free Market Institute, which we have talked with at OG Rose with Javier and Thomas Jockin. RSIs create a feeling of lack, which drives the subject's development and formation of the RSI. It is natural for us to seek to fill and satisfy this lack into AA, and yet the lack is what seems to make possible the RSI. There is good reason to think that if we fulfilled the lack, we would efface ourselves and our subjectivities versus negate, sublate them. Why exactly requires a deeper examination to the field of psychoanalysis, for which I point you again to Cadell's work. But here I will ask that you just take my word for it, that the interplay between the real, imagined, and symbolic are essential to the formation of the subject. Unless subjects can somehow exist without RSIs, which we don't have much reason to think is possible, then the removal of lacks would be the termination of the RSIs, which subjectivities need to be structured. Even people who achieve the absolute knowing of Hegel still exist in and with RSI, though they are consciously aware of the paradoxical limits and problems of RSI. Why do we feel the lack of some ultimate wholeness? Why do we feel the lack of some ultimate wholeness? That's a hard question, but if we allow extreme speculation, perhaps it is because we are part of a universe which emerged out of a radical point of original singularity before the Big Bang. Question mark. Perhaps, and figure 5 on page 9 of Cadell Last's paper depicts the movement from primordial other origin to heterogeneous matter, multi-local order, stars, galaxies, and planets, and eventually to the black hole era of total decay. Moving away from primordial order perhaps subconsciously feels like an entropic movement toward total decay, and so we are subconsciously primed to desire a return to some supra-unity, some original singularity. We seem naturally inclined to desire a return to wholeness, perhaps mainly because we were in a room where we were one with our mothers, but perhaps also because there is something about being part of the universe, which inclines us in a similar way. Again, this is all speculation, but it indeed seems natural for us to seek a technological singularity, which is like our perhaps imagined original singularity. We can discuss our instincts to suggest that there are drives in humans which are tied to deep animalistic nature, which we cannot escape, and that reasoning and thinking often come to serve without our realizing it. Our biological natures are leftovers of evolution. Similarly, perhaps we also have cosmic instincts, which are leftovers of the Big Bang. Perhaps our cosmic instincts make us seek a way to avoid total decay and the age of black holes by curving the development of the universe back on itself toward original singularity per se. The universe seems incapable of continuing forward without further entropy, as we perhaps subconsciously realize, and so seek to reverse course and head back to our origin. No, we can't actually return to our original singularity, as we can never actually return to the womb, but that has never stopped us from, with libidinally drenched minds, trying subconsciously, even if logic and facticity make it clear that what we desire is impossible. Our subconscious minds won't go down without a fight. Ultimately, this all suggests that if we think we're intellectually matured by deconstructing Eden and seeking technological singularity, we might be self-deceived. We might be under affliction, believing we are under beauty. Thinkers from Freud to Lacan have examined how the RSI structure of the human subject incorporates instinctual drives and evolution. And it wouldn't be far-fetched to me to suggest that evolution couldn't have arisen to human subjects without also arising to RSIs. The RSI is the price we paid for becoming subjects, and though perhaps we might have days where we wish we were animals instead of desk workers, a theme in Kafka, overall, I would say the costs of RSI are worth it. There is goodness and beauty, which we can enjoy as subjects, which otherwise we would never know, which would suggest that evolution and the cosmos arising to subjects is a net positive, especially if subjects are somehow essential for higher universal development and beauty. However, if we are to keep this goodness and beauty, we must come to terms with ourselves. And as of this particular historic moment, that requires coming to terms with lack and RSI as menti-divergent children. Though we can understand why RSI is biologically beneficial, what about cosmically? Is the benefit of RSI the possibility of avoiding total decay by curving universal development back toward the original singularity? That seems to be what we are subconsciously assuming, perhaps not coming to terms with our subconscious minds or doing the work to rightly cultivate it. And this subconscious assumption is being transferred into our effort for technological singularity, which entails an effort to remove lack from the RSI. For if RSI had no lack, it would not be missing anything and thus would be singular and whole like the original singularity. In this way, our movement toward the technological singularity might be a movement of affliction. And if we do not come out of this affliction discourse AA into attention rhetoric AB, we shall undergo self-effacement. But accomplishing this seems to require addressing the problem of scale, perhaps our greatest challenge. Is all this right? Is all this the right way to think about RSI? Is it wise to perhaps subconsciously interpret the RSI as evidence that we need return before we need to return before the Big Bang, like some cosmic effort to return to the womb? It's natural to interpret the RSI as something to be corrected, AA, for at the heart of it is a lack, but our natural tendency to view lack as something to be fulfilled and done away with could be a mistake. What if the lack that bothers us is simultaneously necessary for the existence and development of the subject nicotropically? What if the universe wouldn't have observers without the RSI, which emerges thanks to lack? If all this follows, perhaps our goal shouldn't be a singularity, but a harmony, AB. Now we'll conclude Chapter 3, Section 3A. Next, we will discuss 3B, approaching technological singularity and harmonizing RSIs, which will be exploring further the work of Cadell Last. For more by Cadell Last, please visit philosophyportal.com. Please check out his paper. He also has a book, Systems and Subjects, that is very relevant here that we will get into. And for the rest of the Belonging Again II.1 sections, please check out the playlist. And thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it very much. All the best.